Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. I'm here with Viv. She's been a guest on my channel before, and we're gonna have some fun talking about death in the family. How you doing?
I'm all right, and you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just turning off all my other things so there's no echoes. I don't know what I was thinking. All right, all right. So we talked before a couple of weeks ago. You were a guest on my Wednesday talks, and I thought we had fun. And you kept mentioning death in the family, so I suggested, hey, why don't you come back and we'll talk about this 4-issue Batman series? Here we go. If there's anybody in the comments, let me just know if we're looking good, sound good. Hey, good morning, Abrax. How you doing? So it looks like we're live. It looks like we're good. All right. So I was just filibustering until I got some feedback. All right. So, Viv, I forget what we were talking about that we brought up death in the family.
I don't know, man. I love Jason Todd. I love this storyline, so I probably brought it up. In that context, I feel very strongly that Batman is responsible for Jason Todd's death. Although everyone keeps telling me like, oh, he disobeyed Batman, but like I actually did a lot of research. I tracked down this article where like there's a panel about Dick talking to Batman about Damian, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I won't take him in because he disobeys me." And he's like, Dick's like, "But I made a career of that." Um, so like, they're like, first of all, like he's this moody child. Like Batman notices him getting moody and violent. He even comes to the conclusion that he hasn't fully processed his parents' death, and then like he's this traumatized orphan, and at no point like does he even talk about getting him therapy when he starts getting super violent. The same essay points out like he sort of notices he gets super violent. He's like, hey, knock it off. And he never gets him any help for like his anger management issues. There's never talk about therapy for processing the trauma of his parents' death. And it even goes to the point where like there's a panel, and I cannot remember which issue it's in, but someone's kind of bad mouthing Batman for taking on all these kids. And Jason overhears it and he's like, maybe they needed it. Like, even he's like, this is the only thing Batman could have done. Like, he points that out. And I'm like, no, there's therapy. There's and like it's interesting because I did research on other media of this. Like I rewatched Titans, and even when he goes to therapy, it's implied that Batman might be like talking to his therapist about him behind his back, like breaking HIPAA, not being ethical about it. And Jason certainly believes that. And there's really like he's like, hey, no, I didn't. But like there's really no like pushback on that, like no real pushback. So it's a very weird thing. I mean, like, and it goes back to season 2 of Titans, where he basically gets bullied by a room full of adults and a couple kids, almost commits suicide. And like, Dick's never like, hey, maybe we should get him into therapy for this.
I never watched the cartoons. I heard what Teen Titans Go and Teen Titans. I don't know. I heard one season, one cartoon was very good. One cartoon was very bad, but I don't know.
This isn't a great version of it. It's the new one on Max, so it's a live action. But it
okay. I forgot like, about that show.
Batman breaks character like so bad. It's not really Batman. It's kind of terrible on some levels, but I like some of the stuff that they did, even though I recognize it's terrible at the same time. But I was just interested in going back and revisiting that. And it's really interesting because I'm going to spoil some of Red Hood, Under the Red Hood. I'm sorry. I'm going to spoil some of Under the Red Hood, some previous issues. So like Batman 408, 422, 424, as well as some more recent comics like Night Terror's Robins, because it kind of all ties into this.
Okay.
So like in both versions of Under the Red Hood, the animated movie.
Let's start at the beginning first. Let's start at let's start with, first off, what is Batman Death in the Family? We got
It,
to start with that. We're, I always try to assume that that each video is somebody's first video and introduction to a subject. So
okay.
so in
So
this comic, we have a 4-issue series within the Batman comics. And
yeah.
this was editorially mandated. Denny O'Neil regrets everything. Denny O'Neil was the editor. So let's first, we'll start with the credits over here. Can everybody see that? Okay, we got Jim Starlin, writer. So Jim Starlin, for those who may not know, it was the creator of Thanos. So I find this to be very bizarre that Jim Starlin is doing this pretty much like Earthy story when he's known for cosmic space stuff. We got Jim Aparo, who to me is my Batman artist. He is I know, this is when I started collecting Batman. Mike DiCarlo's the inker. Mike DiCarlo, I think, was the creator and writer and the artist on Booster Gold. John Costanza letterer. He is the, just a workhorse for Marvel and DC. Adrian Roy is my third favorite colorist. Bob Kane, creator. I'm saving Denny O'Neil for last. Dan Raspler is the assistant editor, and he also wrote the Young Heroes in Love, which was a short-lived series that I absolutely loved. And Denny O'Neil, editor. And let's look at the indicia if that can focus. But was that 1988? All right, so that's. I just wanted to get the background information out of the way. So Denny O'Neil was editorially mandated. Let's do a stunt. And they put in. Do you remember this? Were you in comics at the time when they did the 1-800 number and you could call to see whether or not Robin lives or dies?
It was in the 80s, and I was born in the 80s.
Okay, all right. So you
No,
weren't
I
around
was
at this
way
time.
too young to be into Batman, but
Okay.
like,
I remember this. It made the news. It was a big deal. And they put up a 1-800 number, and Denny O'Neil was against it. He thought it was crass and exploitive, and he was very protective of the Batman characters. But when you're told to do something, you got to do it.
yeah.
So he didn't like it. So I just, and of course, Robin was going to live or die based on the poll, and everybody was calling and kill it, because at the time people didn't like Jason Todd.
No, that's a myth from what I've seen.
Oh, you think that's a myth?
I have a source that on Screen Rant where they say that out of about 10,000 votes, there was like a 72 margin.
Okay.
And rumors are so persistent that people automated calls to do it that, like, at one point there's a Jason Todd special on one of the DVDs for Titans, and
Okay.
like they think that they nailed down a lawyer in California. At least this is a claim from someone within DC, I can't remember. They think that they nailed down a lawyer in California who set up this automation system, and that without him, because he voted so many times through that, without that, Jason Todd would have lived.
Oh,
So
wow. I
I
didn't know
can't
that.
I
Okay,
can't
cool.
actually find any confirmation of the automation, but like people think, and I've seen other numbers, like out of 10,000, it was a couple hundred or 500, but like I've seen now, like apparently I think it was someone from DC in this article who was saying that there was actually not that much of a margin. So people think it was like 75 to 90% people who kept voting in for Jason Todd to die, but it's not true. He wasn't as deeply unpopular.
I'll even go farther than that. I heard that it was decreed that he was going to die no matter what the poll. And I also can't back that up. I wasn't going to bring it up. But since we're talking about this,
I read another article about it that looked deeply into it and what people at DC were saying, and they think that that can be safely debunked. Like DC had not decided on it.
okay.
And I think I have a quote from like Denny O'Neil, but I'm not sure it's him. But someone in DC was saying, we thought people would vote for him to live because we were like counting on the good nature of humans or something like that. And sort of it was a crushing blow. And what you said with Denny O'Neil, it wouldn't surprise me if it was him. But yeah, it wasn't that much. And then I can't remember who said it, but one of the essays that I read was saying that a lot of people were more neutral towards him than overly hostile. And some people liked him, but it leaned closer to like neutrality or hostile, because he was sort of like more of almost a real teenage kid than Dick Grayson, because like I said, he was moody, he was
Yeah,
angry a lot, and Dick Grayson was also so pleasant. And of course, we're talking about post-crisis
right.
Jason Todd, because I haven't read pre-crisis, but everything I've read about that, he was exactly like Dick Grayson.
I remember at the time when I was, when I was collecting, because I got these as they came out. I remember I didn't like Jason Todd, but I didn't vote because even at the time, I'm trying to think how old I was. Even at the time, I thought it was like a cheap publicity stunt. I've gone on record saying that I'm not a big fan of like stunts in comics. I'm trying to think if there was any big stunts. Like I didn't like Death of Superman. I liked Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though now I recognize that it was a mistake. But I like good storytelling. I don't like cheap stunts. So I didn't vote. I didn't call in, and I didn't particularly like Jason Todd. But I don't know. I think killing off Robin was a bad precedent. But Danny O'Neill
an essay later on that argues that it was good because it shows where Batman kind of fails.
Right. Yeah. And it made Jason Todd an interesting character. Everybody loves Red Hood. I even after killing him, bringing him back, I didn't like either. But what do I know? Apparently, everybody likes Jason Todd.
You know the story behind that?
No, I don't.
Judd Winnick was brought on, and they were like, "What do you want to do?" And they were like, "I want to bring back Jason Todd." And the editorial team was kind of like, "Crap," because they had never intended to bring back Jason Todd. So Judd Winnick is the sole reason.
Oh, okay. There you go.
That we have Jason Todd back.
Yeah,
but this was intended to be like an Uncle Ben thing where he just stayed dead.
Yeah, that used to be the only people who stay dead in comics were Uncle Ben and Bucky, and that got updated.
Yeah.
So let's look a little bit through the comics over here. I'll tell one last story. I saw Eddie O'Neill doing this in a television interview, that talking about this, and I was trying to find that interview, but of course I couldn't find it. But he said he went into a deli, and he struck up a conversation with the guy behind the counter as the guy was making his sandwich. And he's like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Oh, I work for DC Comics." And he goes, "Oh, DC Comics." He goes, "Those jerks just killed off Robin." And he was just like, oh, just, he didn't. He goes, "Yeah, I know. I had nothing to do." Even though he was the guy, he didn't want the guy making his food to get upset with them.
Oh God.
Yeah, he was a little horrified. To me, one last thing about Denny O'Neill. He, to me, was like his retirement, his death was the end of a chapter in comic book history that we'll never have again. I think he was like the last editor that took his job seriously. Like he used to say, he was the custodian of Batman, and it was his job to preserve Batman for the next generation. And I don't think Marvel editors, DC editors think like that anymore. So let's look at the comic here. We got 4 issues, so it's not like, unless we got a point to make, I'm not going to zero in on any particular panels. But
the 4th one gets me so bad. I don't understand the 4th one.
Oh, the 4th issue?
Yeah, it just like every time I read it, like it's kind of like this like open-ended cliffhanger, and it just like it makes me so mad. The whole 4th issue.
I haven't looked at these in years because I really don't like the story. I think it went crazy in certain areas. But one of the things I am noticing is look at these backgrounds. They're non-existent.
Yeah.
And the old time coloring. I love Jim Apato's artwork. Look at Robin.
Should we talk about the story a little bit? Because
yeah, go ahead. Talk about stuff while I'm showing the art. Go ahead.
So so basically Batman just has it with Jason Todd being super violent. He may have pushed a rapist off a roof at this time in Batman 224. I believe that he did, but it's kind of open-ended. He's like beaten a pimp nearly to death for beating a woman that worked for him, a prostitute. And this is the point where Batman's like, "Hey, knock it out," and then like never really does anything. And then he like may have pushed this rapist off a roof. Guy's a diplomat's father. The diplomat like tries to kill, I think, Jim Gordon in retaliation. And like Batman's like, "See, this is what happens," but he never does anything more. So at this point, he's like, no, I can't do this anymore. So he's like, well, I've got to pull you off duty. And Jason just gets super angry about it. So he's bummed out. So he's walking around and he goes to where he used to live. He was living alone because he was orphaned. His mom died. In this, they say it was an illness. Later on, they retcon it to being a drug related death, I believe. But in this one, it's an illness, and his father has died because he was working for Two-Face, and Two-Face turned on him. So he doesn't want to go into foster homes, so he's living on the street. And so this is where he goes back. And a neighbor is like, hey, I have stuff of yours. And he finds out that his mother, Catherine Todd, is not in fact his birth mother.
Okay.
He's so mad at Batman that he decides to track down these 3 women that he think might be his birth mom, based on the detective.
This all happened previously to this issue?
No, this is in this issue. This is in Death of the Family.
Okay.
So like he starts tracking them down, and Bruce has realized that Jason is gone by now, but he's like, but the Joker stole this nuclear stuff because he's being tracked down by all the
cruise missile right here, yeah.
So he's like, well, I have to go to Lebanon to track down Joker where he's selling this stuff. And then it turns out that the first woman that Jason is tracking down is in Lebanon. And so they meet up, and he's like, Jason's like, oh, you came after me. And he's like, I hate to say it, but I'm going after the Joker. So they go after the Joker. And then Bruce is like, I'll help you track down these other 2 women. This is sort of very brief. And the second woman is in Israel. She's in the Mossad. Or I think she was actually the first woman. So like the second woman might have been the one that they did in Lebanon, who's the mercenary. And then, the Joker's fled, or they think he's dead or something because the nuclear weapon explodes. And so like they end up meeting up at Lebanon. The second woman isn't his mom, so they have to go to Ethiopia, where they're meeting Sheila Haywood, who is in fact Jason Todd's birth mother.
Okay.
But the Joker knows her from Gotham, where she was a doctor and she had been responsible for a patient's death, and she fled so she wouldn't lose her job. So the Joker ends up blackmailing her into stealing medical supplies that he can sell, because at this point he's trying to get funds. This is why he's been trying to sell the nuclear weapon. So Jason ends up revealing that he's her kid and that he's Robin. And Bruce was like, oh, I'll go give you some time alone to get to know each other. Ends up that Jason catches on that the Joker is blackmailing her. And at the same time, he sent off like fake trucks, like trucks full of like quote unquote medical supplies, but they're really laughing gas. So he's like, Batman's like, well, I have to take care of this. Stay here, but don't go into that warehouse where your mom is. And like, he's like, as soon as he leaves, he's like, I should have stayed with Jason. But he goes off, he deals with the laughing gas. Jason at this point is, every time he's gotten violent so far, it's been over women. So he's got like a protective, like he's very protective of women, is what we've seen.
Yeah.
So he's like, no, I can't stay while my mom is blackmailed and threatened by the Joker. So he goes in, and it turns out that his mom is so desperate not to get caught that she sells out the son that she's just met. And this is some of the most disturbing things I've read. Like, just the mom is the kick in the gut, and no other retelling or medium has like had the guts to go for the throat like Jim Starlin did.
Yeah.
So like they always wipe out his mom's storyline because it's just too much. So she sells him out to the Joker. He beats Robin with a crowbar while she literally takes a smoke break.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, I'm just going to smoke. So then the Joker is like, well, I'm gonna go, and he leaves them with a bomb in the room. He locks the door from the outside, but they don't know that. So there's this desperate like attempt to save each other. Like uh, Sheila doesn't know Jason's alive. When she realizes he's alive, she's like, oh my god, we've got to get you out. And so they get to the door, they try to open the door, it's locked, and the bomb goes off. Batman arrives at the scene. He finds Sheila first. And she's like, even at the end, he tried to shield me with his body. He was such a good boy. I didn't deserve him. Pretty much is what she says. She dies. Batman's like, I cannot do anything for her. Looks through the rubble, finds Robin dead. Brings him home. Well, he strips him of everything that shows that he's Robin. He's kind of like to the authorities, like, oh, I don't know, my son just got caught in this explosion while we were in Ethiopia, whatever.
Yeah.
And he brings Jason's body back, quietly buries him, and then goes after the Joker, or tries to. The Joker has been invited to Iran at this point.
Right. Yeah. That was the part of the story that always got me crazy. Like, why?
His diplomat. Yes, this drives me crazy. As a Jewish woman, like, just him being the Iranian diplomat drives me nuts. But it also is a way to get him out of like any retaliation. So he goes to the UN to give a speech, and Superman's there because Batman figures out where he is, and Superman's like, hey, I'm here to stop you. And Batman's like, what do you mean? And it kind of goes around in circles until the Joker comes as like the diplomat. And Superman's like, yeah, I'm here to stop you because he's got diplomatic immunity, which Jim Starlin apparently loved to do because he wrote the rapist son, the diplomat son who was the rapist, who like had diplomatic immunity.
I wonder if that was Jim Starlin trying to show how absurd this diplomatic immunity thing is. Possibly. Which is abused in stories. I mean, diplomatic immunity doesn't really work that way. I mean,
so like it kind of just ends and like goes off, and like it really is a super unsatisfying ending to me. Like this feels like it should have been a 3-issue storyline. But so that's basically what happens. It was
so that was the first issue was basically what I was just showing while you were talking. It was all about the first woman, the mercenary, right? So
yeah, that was a mercenary, then the Mossad agent, and I'm so glad they did not do the Jewish woman sells out her son because like the tropes with Jews and children, like every time I'm like, please let it not be her, and I'm so relieved that it's not.
I also want to point that at this is the cover here is by Mike Mignola. Mignola, for those of you who do not know, is the creator of Hellboy, and I love Hellboy. It's one of the few comics that I'm like still obsessively getting anything tangentially, but I'm not a fan of this early Mike Mignola artwork. I always found everybody looked like chubby, and I don't know.
I like the artwork, but whatever. Like I just appreciate it for what it is. I very much like these. So like.
Oh, and I also want to point out what Marcus said. This artwork by Mike, I don't think Mike DiCarlo, and here's the credits, it's the same team. Mike DiCarlo, I don't think his inking brings out the best of Jim Aparo. This to me is, when I see Jim Aparo, I think more of like 4-color Batman, and this is, I even forgot how dark this story was. This really is a dark comic. And I don't think Jim Aparo's artwork is the best for such a dark and grim comic. But there you go.
So there's a couple things I'd like to talk about that aren't directly related to this. First of all, I read Batman 408, which is the first appearance of post-crisis Jason Todd. In it, everyone thinks Robin is dead, even though Dick Grayson is still alive, and there's a whole moral panic. There's like, oh my gosh, should Batman be even taking kids out? Blah, 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 this and that. Like, it's a huge thing in the storyline. And I was like, it's kind of weird that that's in there, because later when Jason dies, like the whole Bat family always tells Batman, it's not your fault. Like, everyone tells Batman it's not your fault. Everyone's like, Jason did this. Like, Jason disobeyed you. But like, as we pointed out, Dick Grayson disobeyed him a lot too. And it wasn't seen as like he deserved anything that like any injuries. that he incurred. So like, yeah, it's just this weird inverse. And I just thought it was weird that the first one that he appeared was a Robin's dead storyline, given that he dies not that soon after. Um, and so like, yeah, it was just weird, but like everyone knew that Robin was dead, and like Batman covered it up almost like he was ashamed, like maybe they were right and he shouldn't have been taking kids out there. Because it would have been very different if it was like, oh, Robin was in Ethiopia trying to stop the Joker, and he got killed. Like that would have been like, okay, but why did you take a child there? And like he couldn't really explain that he was going to look for his mother, but
Yeah.
like still, like, you know, it was very weird that he did it all under the cover of darkness. And I'm wondering if it's because we recently had a Robin was dead storyline where it did create this whole like ethical conundrum over him weaponizing kids. And I've been reading Batman and philosophy, and like they're all like, we love Batman, but man, does he weaponize kids? Like they're pretty brutal about it.
Yeah, that's one of the consequences of making a more realistic comic is you got to look at the whole concept of teen sidekicks. I mean, it is, look at a war. I'm trying to think of like towards the end of World War II, weren't they taking like Germany was taking like 14-year-old boys and dressing them up and sending them out to battle? And you have the whole child soldier going on in Africa. Nobody likes to see kids going into fighting, but we put a kid into a red, blue, and green costume, and you know that the whole concept of a teenage sidekick is kind of weird when you take two steps back and look at it.
Right, but it's sort of accepted in comics, and like Marvel
Right.
recently had like the teen superhero law, and I forget what it was called, but like they kind of sort of dealt with it recently, but I don't know if DC has. But like, so I want to go back to whose fault is this, and to do that I have to go a little bit forward to Batman Under the Red Hood, which is where Jason Todd like kind of officially comes back and makes himself known to Batman, like, hey, I'm Jason Todd, I'm your ex Robin, hey, look at me, I'm alive.
So,
but
before you go, I just got to ask you a question because my memory's foggy. Judd Winnick, you said, was the writer who brought back. He put him in a Lazarus pit, right? That's how he came back?
No, actually, they never really explained it. Later on, it was Superboy had this whole like thing, and I forget exactly what's going on. And this comes into play in Under the Red Hood: The Lost Days. So that kind of goes on. That brings Jason back, and then but he comes back like just with no memory, with no like anything, just sort of like muscle memory. And he's taken in by Talia al Ghul, who apparently is hoping it will make Batman love her back.
Yeah.
But like her father's like, it will never work, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to send him somewhere and let him be protected because of my respect for the detective and for you. But, you know, that's what's going to happen. And before he can do that, Talia gets so mad over this, and she's so protective over him by this point. She throws him in a Lazarus pit, which brings back his memory, but kind of drives him crazy.
Okay. Yeah, my memory is fuzzy. I knew there was a Lazarus pit involved somewhere. Yeah.
But before Jason reveals himself to Bruce, Batman is trying to figure this out. And there's a quote from the movie version of this, which is, Red Hood was a nightmare of my own making. And in the actual comic, maybe I have the movie listed as both, but in the either the movie or the comic he says that, and in the other one he says it's a hell of my own making. So he seems to recognize that Jason Todd is sort of his responsibility, even though everyone like later on is like, it's not your fault. So that's really interesting to me that they do that. And yeah, so I've always like, I've never been able to forgive Batman for that, even though literally in Under the Red Hood, Jason's like, I forgive you for not saving me. I'm like, no, I don't.
I want to comment on what Cy Freak is saying right here. I think he's backing you up. He says that teen sidekicks should never have been taken so seriously. It's a fantasy, and that's why they should never get killed. And he follows it up with, it makes things dark, and I don't like this story. I want to say I don't like this story either.
I have a love-hate relationship with it. Like, it kills me every time I read it, but like I'm just drawn to it again and
yeah,
again.
it's
Um,
it's a striking story. It evokes feelings, and to me, the feelings are like it's almost everything I don't like about comic books in a nutshell. This story. First off, I and it's kind of paradoxical, and I understand I'm being a little hypocritical. I like that. I like when Batman's dark. I like the urban legend version of Batman. I like the non-powered detective Batman. Through grit, determination.
no, that makes sense. You can like something dark, but not so
Right.
dark.
But I also didn't like Jason Todd, but I didn't want him killed. I kind of wanted him like written out, like maybe something happens and he leaves or whatever.
He
Um,
finds his birth mom and goes off to live with her.
right.
You know, like,
Yeah.
that would have
That's
been a
that's
way to
kind of
write him
what I
off
was hoping
without
for.
killing him.
Yeah,
But he
I
wouldn't
didn't
have
like that they had a 1-800 number. Everything about this comic I didn't particularly like, and now that I didn't read it because I was kind of hoping that, and you're doing everything I was hoping you'd refresh me on all the details, and I forget just how dark and how grim this period is, and I think that's all part like this is after the Watchmen, and I think after the Watchmen it just like let's take down our heroes a bit, and I think this comic put a stain on Batman that he never recovered from. It's like you're putting little kids into situations like that they shouldn't be in, and now one of them died, and then Batman, like you said, he tampered with the evidence. You can't tamper with a corpse,
He went from no to yes. Oh, and then, but like at some point, he like in a hush, because Under the Red Hood actually has, when I got it collected on Comixology, has the hush part. And like at some point he realizes that he's being faced with Jason Todd, but it's not really Jason Todd. And he's like, you defaced a child's grave. But I'm like, you tampered with the evidence, you got him killed. I want to say something about the teen sidekick thing. I
sure,
think either you have to be like, this is a fantasy, we're not going to take it seriously, or this really reflects real life. But
right.
Batman tries to do both, where it's like a fantasy and he can get killed and it's not Batman's fault. But like, I think if you're going to write a story like this, where Jason Todd does get killed, like one of the things they don't look at is the like, should Batman have even had him out there? And like again, every time to preserve Batman as this kind of pure hero, they're all like, well, Jason Todd was responsible for his own death for this reason, and it like drives me nuts. It's kind of like the
Well, how
suicide.
old was he? How old was the character supposed to be at this point?
I don't know if we have an exact like 14, 16, something.
Okay, I was going to say
Young.
16 at the most. So he can't have responsibility. 16-year-olds don't fly on airplanes and go to Iran and Lebanon. you know,
Well, I mean, like, if he had like been like, this is a gun and I know what it's going to do and I'm going to point it at my head, but like that's not what he did. Like he went in to try and save his mom. First of all, like it was not like even a stupid reckless thing that he did for no reason. He had a reason for going in there. But like what drives me nuts about this is everyone's like, Batman's the world's greatest detective. And I'm like, but you left your moody, violent son
right.
who was very protective over women. Like, you should have seen this. Like, when does he ever like act out? It's literally like the one where he throws the rapist off the roof. Like, the rapist basically taunts Batman and Robin by calling his victim and going, hey, I'm gonna come back. You know they can't do anything. They go there and they find the woman has hung herself. And that's when Jason takes that action. Like he claims like he just came over and the dude got freaked out and slipped. But like Batman's like, really? And he kind of shrugs and like goes off. And like the implication is very much he may have or did throw this dude off the roof. Like, so like to say that Batman couldn't see that like is ridiculous. So to leave his mom who's vulnerable and alone with Robin was a mistake. Like
Right.
he's violent, he's reckless at this point. Like he points it out. Batman wants to get evidence at some point. Like they could have gotten testimony from this guy, but Robin was so like angry and violent that he knocked him out, made him unable to give evidence. Like, and when Batman confronts him, he's like, I know it was stupid, but it was still the right thing to do. Like, you have all this evidence that he's moody, he's reckless,
He's psychologically unfit for this position.
He's got unprocessed trauma, which is why he pulled him off. But like the way he did it was terrible. He was talking to Alfred about him, and Jason overhears, like, and he gets furious. Like, the way it happens is terrible. The way he deals with it afterwards is kind of like to run off after the Joker. Like, it's just all terrible. He's a little bit emotionally negligent. Like, he's just he can't be responsible for a boy like Jason, and like, yet he continues to like try to be. And then like the way he deals with him as Robin, with the violence, like doing nothing up until now, and then he just leaves him alone. Like, you can't claim to be the world's greatest detective and also like be like, it was a mistake to leave him, not go back, not have anyone check up on him, and just be like, it'll be fine until I get there. Like, either he's not the world's greatest detective or like something, but like you can't make that claim and then have this story exist. Like, this story is a glaring.
Yep. Yeah, I thought this. Yeah, I'm not
that he's not, in fact, the world's greatest detective. At least when, and here's the thing, I think it's kind of realistic. When you're that close to someone, I think you blind yourself and you're like, oh, it'll be okay this time. You can be in heavy denial.
Oh yeah, look at all these great parents whose kids are messed up. You know what I mean? Like, that's a blind spot in their life.
And like, what kills me is you look at Bruce and you look at Sheila and you're like, Bruce was definitely the better parent, but like, he could have done so much better.
Well, here you go. Here's Sheila right here on the smoke break. You know, while the Joker.
It kills me that
I forgot how blatant this is.
And I want to say, as much as every other continuity like wipes out Sheila from the storyline, there was a recent couple of issues called Night Terror's Robin, where like everyone's worst fears come to life, and like they're sort of like living in this nightmare world and they have to break out of it. And this is about Tim Drake and Jason Todd. And I'm not really going to go over the Tim Drake part or even much of the Jason Todd part, but like, at one point, Jason is being confronted with being killed by the Joker, and like, he sees this vision and it's just a bunch of his mom's face. And she's like, my boy killed the Joker, like, whatever. I can't remember what else. But like, clearly you have Sheila Todd and her selling him out to the Joker. That hasn't been retconned, which I find really interesting, given the fact that they won't touch it anywhere else.
Yeah.
But like, she is still definitely part of his storyline. And I think it's correct, because as dark and disturbing as it gets, like, that was the emotional gut punch for me in that storyline. That was the thing that really kicked it home. Really, no one took care of this boy as well as they should have, given all the shit that he had been through. And like, yeah, no, he deserved better.
Yeah. Now, like, get back to the child sidekick. You know, I never liked the idea of the child sidekick. I'm sidekick. I said sidekick. I never liked the concept of the child sidekick. Because it you know, I'm not a big fan of identity politics, and to me, the child sidekick is born out of it. Like, the kid needs to identify with the hero, and I don't know. I always thought that to be a flawed concept. Like, but at the same time, Batman sales did take off when Robin showed up. So what do I know? But I thought, like, a kid reads comic books. A child reads comic books out of some sort of power fantasies, you know, like Superman flying around, Batman's cool, and everything like that. And for me personally, I never needed to project myself into the story. I liked the stories and the imagination on their own. I didn't need to be self-inserted. So that, you know, these adults made Robin for that purpose, for the kid to hang out with his hero. I don't know. I always thought, like, if I'm reading Batman, I am Batman. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm reading Spider-Man, I am Spider-Man. I didn't need to be one person removed from the story as a little boy. So I thought that was flawed. So I never liked sidekicks. But Robin never had any powers. so to me that made it even worse. This is a 12-year-old boy or 8-year-old. I forget. One of the comments said he was 8 years old in his original appearance. Taking an 8-year-old kid, I wouldn't even let him go to New York City. You know what I mean, and walk around by himself, much less fight crime.
Yeah, no, like
How
it's
much
so
how much strength and wisdom does an 8-year-old have? But I will make an exception if like he got superpowers. Like I know Superboy's not the sidekick, but it was made out of the same thing. At least Superboy has powers and is kind of
Shazam.
invulnerable. You know what I mean? Can take care of himself in a situation. He could, at the very least, he can flee a bad situation. Look at this. Just look how horrible this is. It's all explosions and death, and she's bleeding out. You know what I mean? That's not where you put.
Yeah, this is where he's like, he was so good, I didn't deserve him.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think this particular comic book, this story rather,
Someone
this is everything that's wrong with comic books in so many different ways.
was once talking to me about it, and he's like, yeah, his mom was a real, and they kind of side-eyed me, and I was like, what? And they were like, bitch. And they were like, but can I say that because you're a woman? And I was like, no, she was definitely a bitch. I was like, I have no good words for his mom.
Yep. Abrex says things were much different when the original Robin was created. Had a couple of great uncles who worked full-time jobs, 8 or 9 years old. Yes. I mean, but Abrex or anybody watching this, we could all agree that child labor is kind of a bad thing. Like I do think like a kid getting a paper route builds character, lets them understand responsibility. You know, it's a good stepping stone for later on in life. But I think we could all agree putting on a brightly covered costume so you could be the target, so Batman can sneak up on you, is not good. The whole concept of Batman taking Robin, I thought was bad. Like you want a kid sidekick? All right, he dresses up and he lives in the Batcave and he learns like detective work and forensics. That not out throwing punches and beating up pimps and criminals. I don't know.
And like, let's not forget, Batman isn't like being like, oh, let's go after this like one guy on the street. Like it's the Penguin, the Riddler,
Right.
the Joker, like Mr. Freeze. These are people with, like you point out, like a lot of them have superpowers, or like the ones that don't are just like so psychotic and evil.
Right. Like, hey, I'm going to adopt an 8-year-old kid and I'm going to go after Ted Bundy with him.
But not only that, like he picks out kids who are like orphans like him, like, yeah. And at least with like Grayson, it seemed like he had been come to some peace at some point with his family's death. But like, I guess he thought that was okay for Jason too. But it was just like, okay, look, teaching you how to punch things will definitely make you okay with your like emotions about your parents' death. And I'm like, that's not the way it works at all.
Fabrizio Halo says it's pint-sized cannon fodder. Crude but true. And then this is the part that just when the story couldn't get any worse. Okay, so for those of you, I kind of just been flipping through the comics because I've been enjoying your commentary. So now we got Batman over here in this taking out the body of Robin, Jason Todd. And we got, the backdrop, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and blah, blah, blah. To me, the story unnecessarily complicated. It didn't need to involve this world traveling. It could have been in a Gotham warehouse, if you ask me, and served the same purpose. This, to me, is where it just gets ridiculous. We're involving real-world politicians, which is the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now he's going to Iran.
And Joker. All of the politicians, they chose that one.
Right. It completely goes off the rails. Completely goes off the rails at this point. This is Jim Starlin. I make no bones, he's one of my favorite comic book creators. Stick to Jupiter, stick to the Andromeda Galaxy. This is just, I don't know if this was like an example of too much editorial decree, that like too many chiefs, not enough Indians, or too many hands in the pot, whatever. But this story is just a mess all over the place. And here we got okay, Bruce made a mistake. He made a horrible mistake. At this point, Alfred should have been, giving him the riot act right over here. Like, do you remember exactly what's going on? How did Alfred make excuses for all this? Because he should have left at this point.
I can't even remember. But like This is like the scene in Titans where like Jason almost walks off the roof and like they never mention it again, like not once. But this is kind of like what I'm saying, like Alfred never reads him the riot act about like getting Jason killed. No one ever comes to him and is like, they're all like, we're so sorry your son died. Like it just happened, and it
Yeah.
wasn't like him
Oops.
literally taking a kid that he'd been training since he was like 8 to fight supervillains out. You know, like like it wasn't that, like it wasn't someone who hadn't even tried to get this kid therapy or anything. Like it's very bizarre. Everyone
It just right here. This shows that Batman is off. He's throwing a punch at Superman. You know.
Yeah, because Superman is protecting the Joker because of diplomatic immunity. Like that's how crazy things have gotten here.
Yeah.
Like Batman isn't responsible for that, but like also like you can't go after the man who is. Like
I always find that funny. That's just like another superhero trope. Is the superheroes they literally like beat the crap out of each other, and then like 2 issues later they're buddies again. Like
also
I consider Fabrizio a friend. I talk to Fabrizio every couple of days. Can you imagine if we're hanging out in a bar and I just sucker punch him? Fabrizio, would you hang out with me after I sucker punched you? You know, I know it's comic books and it's drama and everything, but it's just so like bizarre. This is the panel.
Why would like they follow this law where it's like, okay, legally you can't go in after the Joker because diplomatic immunity, but like you're acting like Batman's in this weird place where it's commented on a lot, where like he works with law enforcement, but he also does shit like breaking and entering.
Right.
Like he goes around literally assaulting people dressed as a bat. Like this
right.
Man,
he dresses up like a vampire and scares people at night.
This man does not follow all the laws.
Well,
like,
also keep in mind the Dark Knight Returns is still hot on everybody's consciousness right now. What was that, 1986? And then this is 1988. This is only yeah. And then think about this, probably created a few months earlier. So this is more close to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, where Superman was the tool of the government and the establishment hero, and and Batman was the cool rebellious one. So I see the Dark Knight Returns influencing this, making Batman the not the bad guy, but like the establishment guy or whatever. And that's another thing. I'm not a big fan of Dark Knight Returns. I'm sorry I talked over you. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I was gonna say he's the one here again who's like in the right. Like he should go after the Joker, but the establishment is stopping him.
Right.
In both cases, it's not so much bad versus good. Superman is the establishment, and the establishment is not always doing the right thing for the good of the people.
It's just not that I would. I don't want to contradict Jim Starlin because I'm such a fanboy of him, but like I the way I rectify this story in my mind is this just must be editorially decreed, because there's just so many poor choices. So many poor choices. So now we got Superman and Batman like fight with each other. Superman's like, stand down, I'm gonna be watching.
They're not even like fighting. It's not even like a good superhero fight. This is just them like verbally sparring at this point.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. And Superman scowling at him. I don't like when Superman's portrayed as the bad guy. To me, Superman is always intrinsically the good guy. Like that's his main superpower is Superman. Like it's almost like supernaturally he radiates goodness and comfort and hope. You know what I mean? To use Superman as the heavy to protect.
He wouldn't even have to kill the Joker. Like, couldn't he do something with like his laser eyes where it was like he just incapacitated the Joker? Like, oops, accident. This thing fell on his leg. It's broken. He cannot. Like, we need to get him to a hospital where we can like keep an eye on him.
it would, to me, like, again, I hate to use the word realistic in a particular comic book, but even in Superman's own comic book, like, he went after Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor was what, the mayor of Gotham, Metropolis at one point, or the governor, I forget what happened, or president. Yeah, he was elected president, and Superman went after him. So, like, this selective, like, we're going to protect the establishment here. So this, to me, is just a misuse of Superman, and I'm very protective of Superman. But like you said, yes, okay, Superman. I could see Superman being like, Bruce, you're too close to this. Calm down. I got this. I got this. You know, and
he's
Superman
not. He's like, we're just gonna let the Joker do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
Diplomatic immunity.
I just
But
hate
like,
that.
that's
And
the
that,
thing.
to me,
Like,
it's just Dark Knight Returns. I was not a fan of it when it came out, and I'm definitely not a fan of everything that came out because of it. I'm also not a fan of the UN. So here, like, at this point, this would have been a good time for, like, the Justice League satellite just to demolish the whole thing.
characters and rules are very inconsistent based on what a story calls for, is what
Right.
like getting and where I've been at for a while. So like I sort of kind of accept it, but like also, yeah, I think it's appropriate to call that out. Like, if Superman would go after the president, like, why won't he go after this guy with diplomatic immunity? And it gets complicated because if you get real world about it, like,
Yes.
Iran might use nuclear weapons themselves, like, whatever. Like, so I kind of get it, but like, this is also a story that's being written. Like, you literally didn't have to write him in as the ambassador of Iran. It kind of comes out of left side. Like, the first time I read this, I was like, that was a good story, but I don't understand what the last issue and a half are going to offer. And I was like, oh, this bullshit.
Like what you said, this literally didn't have to. I've said this a million times. Comic books have infinite special effects and infinite possibilities. So and I again, it's Jim Starlin, and I feel bad saying this, so I keep telling myself this was editorially decreed because I love Jim Starlin, but like, out of all of the infinite possibilities, this is what materialized on the page. So I just think there must be too many hands prodding it. But look at this. So Superman is defending this, because ultimately this is what Superman defended.
I mean, he kind of does, but he also saves the people. But he's like, but we still can't, like, go after him because
Superman did his X-ray vision on the Joker. I mean, that just shows me that it's stupid. So now you know the Joker. At this point, this guy is a mass murderer. How many people did he kill at this point with poisoned fish and whatever? And now he's talking to all the diplomats in the world in a contained room. Superman doesn't at least have them scanned. Why? He's protecting the Joker's personal rights or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't know. Like, it never should have got to this point.
None of this makes sense.
Right. At this point, it should have been like Superman shows up and like, you don't have diplomatic immunity to do this, and reveal that he's got poison canisters. And at that point, the Joker would have been apprehended, taken care of. Diplomatic immunity and not Iran would have been like, what the hell? We get, you know, and you get it. It's just so bad.
It should have been a 3-issue storyline, and in my opinion, Alfred just should have slapped the shit out of Batman at the end.
Right. Yeah. Did you read the Cassandra Cain Batgirl story? Oh, first let me address what Marcus said here. Dark Knight Returns was never supposed to be canon. Yes, it is. Yeah, it still never is. But the problem with this is going to sound weird, is that it existed and it influenced everything. Like,
no, I get what you're saying.
Like, I always say that comic books, like, there's before Watchmen and after Watchmen. The Watchmen irreversibly influenced comic books for good or for bad, and I love the Watchmen. I thought the Watchmen was a wonderful comic. I think Alan Moore is a genius. I love Frank Miller. I think Frank Miller is a genius. But even Alan Moore said in an interview he kind of regrets the influence that the Watchmen had, in that he took down superheroes, and it was an interesting aside. To him, what Alan Moore said was, he wanted to see what would happen if superheroes really existed in the world and how it would influence the world. And the Watchmen is dark. Nobody's going to say is a positive world. And he was trying to say, this is why we don't want realism in comics, because it would ultimately go to darkness. And I think The Dark Knight Returns is kind of exploring the same territory. Like, there you go. You know, when your father or mother says, okay, you know, you want to go out at night and you learn a lesson. That's the lesson. Now let's go back to our comic books that we love. And he says, the wrong lesson was learned. Oh, let's make more realistic in comic books. And I don't know. I want Superman to exist in this I want Metropolis to be a beautiful city. I want there to be peace and love and inspiration. Of course, we need the darkness. We need the Joker, because then there's no purpose for Batman. But we kind of like, oh, cool, it's dark, it's gritty. Now we're gonna make comic books dark and gritty.
And then you get The Boys.
And then perfect. You just my mind was foggy. And then we get The Boys, and I don't even want to watch The Boys. You know, I think, like Frank Miller and Alan Moore just said, we went too far. This was an exploration. You know, you look at we look over there. There's the warning. That's where we're headed. Steer the ship in this direction. Well, we're going in the wrong way. Joker, these clothes looks very weird. Yes, it's jarring. It's jarring. Look at this big jar. It's almost like he's mutated. This was never the best story, but the ones that fall, yes, it got better. Yeah, I personally think that Denny O'Neil, I think he got more and more in control, and he was able to like right the ship. By the time like the Chuck Dixon and Alan Grant years, Denny O'Neil was like the king. You know, I don't know if he had as much power and control at this point, but I don't think it ever got as weird and wacky and bizarre as this particular story. What is Marcus saying? Since modern writers don't understand here, yeah, okay. I want to follow up what you said. Now we got The Boys. Do you watch The Boys at all?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I read all of The Boys.
Yeah,
and
I read the comics because I'm a Garth Ennis fan.
I got to volume 4 or 5 where it was like the whole X-Men pedophile thing, and it still makes me feel weird to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I had just been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder over childhood sexual assault. So like that whole thing, I couldn't read it for a year, and I had to go back and reread everything, and it was very hard for me. I enjoyed it, but it was also like it made me felt gross inside. Like
absolutely,
it's definitely not one of my favorite. And I also like the writer. I ended up getting that on Humble Bundle, so I got like all 12 for like $12 less in given everything else I got with that. But I mean, like they gave me the first 6 issues of Dear Becky, which was a spin-off, like kind of prequel type thing. And kind of like it talked a lot about what happened before, but sort of also what happened. It was mixed. And there are more issues, and I never wanted to go back and read it because I really didn't like it. Just makes me feel so weird. I'm not going to pay for more of that, like full price.
Right. I loved Preacher, and Preacher went into dark places, but ultimately Preacher, like the character of the Preacher, he was a bad person who became good. So
I watched Preacher. I didn't read it. I haven't read it yet.
The show Preacher revealed in the weirdness and the darkness of the comic, and it did not show any of the light. I'm not a fan of Seth Rogen. If I see Seth Rogen's name on something these days, I've learned, you know, how many times can you fool me? Fool me once, shame on you. You know,
so,
I think that guy just, there's something wrong with him. But he takes all the darkness and joy out of Preacher, and I don't know. I got to finish. I didn't even watch the last season.
I own the full run of Preacher, so I'll have to read that at some point.
You brought up that you were Jewish, so let me just ask you this: Could you imagine if a bunch of Catholic people made a TV show making fun of Judaism? And that when I watched Preacher, I got Seth Rogen and all the creators, all these Jewish people, and it's just making fun of Roman Catholicism.
Dude, I feel like a bunch of I'm Jewish. Some of us aren't Jewish, which is really interesting. But that's a whole other different
right. And that's the way
I was gonna say something about mocking Catholicism, but like I don't want to go there. Because it's deeply personal. But yeah, no, I've seen Jews mocked for Judaism in real life. Like I get it, and religion is touchy. I think if you're doing it to all religions and you're not just doing it to stir up hatred of a group, which I didn't get from Preacher, that it's okay. So if the show were like not actually stirring up hatred against Jews, I may not watch all of it, but I'd probably be okay with it. Like
Well,
there are shows, Lovecraft County actually did a whole one where like the Nazi was a Jew, and it's like, okay, this exists, but I don't like, after reading about that, I don't want to watch it.
I didn't watch that show because I'm such a Lovecraft fan, and then when I found out that, like, the topics were racism and whatever, I'm like, I'm not interested. When if I see something about Lovecraft, I want it to be about scary monsters from outer space and insanity, to turn it for a modern audience.
Well, I started it, but like the Nazi episode was like the one where like I couldn't, yeah. But anyway, yeah, like I don't know. I'm sort of like, as long as it's not literally inciting hatred,
right.
I'm
I get what you're saying.
but yeah, I can understand not wanting to watch it based on that. Like we all have reasons to watch things or don't watch things. But
the boys, I bought the boys when it came out. Again, I'm a big fan of Garth Ennis. Hitman is probably one of my favorite comics of all time. I just love Hitman. Is just a wonderful exploration of the comic book superhero medium itself. I cannot recommend that series itself. So I'm a fanboy of Garth Ennis for life. But Garth Ennis doesn't like superheroes, and then he took the boys, and the boys to me is a logical exploration of realism in comic books. It's the Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns to the nth degree, to the point where I forget, it lasted 66 issues or 75 issues, I forget.
Sounds about right. It was 12 volumes.
Right. So something about that. I think I'm going to say 75 just to make the math. I think I stopped reading it around issue 40. It just made my stomach hurt. It made me feel gross, but I still collected it because I'm an insane person. And then when it was all done, I read it all. I reread it all from beginning to end. And I don't want to spoil it because everybody's watching the show, but I thought the conclusion was satisfying and the point that it made, that even the good guys are the bad guys, and those who think that they are doing the most good are absolutely the worst people. So I like the way he tied it up. Garth Ennis is a good writer, but
I think I was left unsatisfied for the same reason that I was left unsatisfied with this, which is I kind of wanted to see a good guy win, right. And I never really got that in this.
Now, I remember bringing comic books to school when I was in 6th grade, and one of my friends was just like, I'm not interested. Like, we were all reading the Chris Claremont, John Byrne X-Men's and devouring them, and I was the comic book guy, and we would all just trade the comic books and talk. And I remember this kid, Andy, he was just like, I don't like comic books. The superheroes always win. There's no, he didn't say it because this is 6th grade. He wasn't eloquent enough. But what he was really saying is there's no dramatic tension because the good guys are going to win. So I can understand why you want to add like a death every once in a while to increase the drama and increase the stakes. But I don't want it to go this real. I don't want the stakes to be like this. Like, I want the comic books to be escape fantasies. I want there to be. I'm sorry?
The problem is, like, you have characters and you kill them, and then like the fans are like, well, we want to see these characters, so you bring them back. And now there's no dramatic tension again. It's like my friend and I were watching Supernatural. Like, we were just binging like the first 7 seasons because it had all been out. And like at some point, like Dean dies again. And like my friend turns to me and he's like, well, there's no, like, it doesn't mean anything. He's just going to come back. And he was right. Like, the fact they kept killing off the 2 main characters and then bringing them back to life, and it was just meaningless. So at this point, you have like Jean Grey, who's died like 100 times now.
She's the exception. If your name is Phoenix, I'll accept you coming back from the dead. Just like if your name is Spider-Man, then you can stick to walls, But
my point is like, if Jean Grey had died once, maybe twice, like it still would have been like this thing where like, okay, it meant something.
Right.
And like, you still like, maybe, but like, you can't come back every time you die. And now they have like the whole Krakoa thing in X-Men where everyone can come back. So like their deaths are like, sometimes they'll use them to be kind of funny, but like death has become meaningless.
Right.
So like there's really no
Kamala Khan
dramatic
died,
tension.
and
Like
not
you
even
can't.
3 weeks. Not even 3 weeks after the death of Kamala Khan. I mean, we all knew she was coming back. There's a movie coming out with her, but she's been dead for 3 weeks.
Right. So the point is, like, I think we went from, oh, there's no dramatic tension. Maybe if we throw in a couple deaths to, but people want these characters, so we'll just bring them back. And now we're back to no dramatic tension.
Yeah.
So like comic books are a lot about excess. And it's one of the reasons I like them, but that excess can hurt them sometimes.
Yeah. Yep. And here we got Superman saving Batman. So Superman's been watching the whole time. You know what? So Superman's there to Deus Ex Machina and save Batman.
Yeah, Superman's just like, well, we're gonna
right.
But like, I will save everyone at the end.
So Superman let this helicopter fly into this building. Like there was no night guy, there was no janitor. Nobody owns this. The insurance company. I just find this just. Everything about this comic is particularly ugly. Yeah, and Arthur T. Yes, this is 1988. So yes, I don't know. I thought this was, again, here I am talking about realism in comic books, but and you got to have explosions, you got to have helicopters flying around. It's comic books, but if you're gonna have Superman come in and swoop down and save the day, like then what's the point? The why was there a fight? Superman's just in the sky in the clouds watching helicopters crash into buildings, and okay, now I'll intervene.
Oh god!
Look at the Superman with the mustache over here.
Okay, but I just want to emphasize again, like my main takeaway from Death in the Family, and like my main takeaway from like a lot of the Jason, like the post Death in the Family Jason Batman interactions, is that Jason is not responsible for his own death. I know I've said it again and again, but so many people argue with me about this. Like, I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. And it's just really nice to talk to someone who is not like, well, was this child who was weaponized really responsible for his own death?
Right. So let's look at this from a logical perspective. He was an emotionally disturbed child. Given all the resources in the world by the world's smartest detective. You know what I mean? And the world's smartest detective, how did he get to where was it? Lebanon? Where was Addis Ababa? How does this happen? You know what I mean?
He took his credit cards. Like there's a scene where he's like, hey, I've got plastic. Like at least Bruce can do this for me. Like, but all those smarts and all that money, and Bruce, like, I know it was 1988 and like we weren't all like as therapy happy as we are now, but therapy definitely existed and was like a thing a lot of people went to. Like,
well, even I'm trying to remember my age. I think I was 20. I'm 54 now. So I think I was in my 20s, and it was like, I'm not going to say I was a kid, but I was definitely more immature back then. Even then I knew Jason Todd was disturbed, and I think that's why I didn't like him. He just wasn't a fit. Like, Dick Grayson, yes, he was created in the 40s, and he was happy-go-lucky, and he was perfectly well adjusted. So so he was a fantasy. There's no way but he was the magic bullet. He was perfect. He was everything that Batman needed. And it could be replicated. It's to be like the guy who breaks up with the girl that he loves. So he goes out after a girl that looks like her, and then like ignores all the bad things about her because she looks like the girl that he actually loves. Is that comparable? Because Jason Todd,
a little bit. I was gonna say, like, Dick Grayson is not the perfect Robin for me, and that's because like he would never. Like, if Batman were like, did you push this rapist off a roof? Dick Grayson would be like, what? No. Like, Jason Todd is at least okay with Bruce thinking this. Like, Jason's okay with him thinking that. And, like, that's part of what makes me think that he actually pushed it. Like, I can't see Jason really having scared this guy off and, like, Bruce having him think badly of him. Like, he very much needed Bruce to think well of him in some ways, but like I can't see him just being like Bruce being like, did you push him off the roof? And he didn't, and him just being like, what do you think? And going off. And like,
you're the world's greatest detective. You bought that lie.
I fell in love with this character when I realized that he in fact did like he it's not just that he raped this girl, it's that he tormented her to the point of suicide with the possibility of it happening again and again and again and her being powerless to stop it. Like the police are literally like we can't do anything, we have to let him go. Like to torture someone that much into
Right.
suicide, like the fact that he would take direct action where he's like, I'm going to make sure you can never do this again. Like, not like put you in Arkham. Like, you are never doing this to another woman again. Like, I fell in love with the character because of that. That was what makes him my perfect Robin. Like, Dick Grayson will never have that for me.
What's funny is I have a friend, female friend, and she loves Jason Todd. Of all my female comic book friends, Jason Todd is their favorite Robin, and I wonder if that's it. I never made that connection until this conversation. Is it like his extreme? Is it chivalrous? Is chivalrous the right word?
Well, protective. He's protective of women and children to the point where, like, there's a list of like the 5 best things about Jason Todd as Robin, and like one of them is he loves his mom, as proven by like him saving her in Death and Family. But the other one was he's a feminist, and they actually use like some of his most violent acts, like him beating up this pimp, like as proof of feminist, because like these are not men who are just like nah, these are men who are actively like oppressing and beating women. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the women do. Like one of my best friend woman, we will like fake argue, but like she loves Dick Grayson. Like he's the perfect Robin for her. But for me, it's Jason. So I know women who would disagree with me, but like, yeah.
What do you think of what is the newest one now? I can't even think of his name.
Is it Tim Drake?
Yeah, Tim Drake. What do you think of Tim Drake?
So honestly, I rate Robins on if they're nice to Jason. Like that's my like, do I like you as Robin or a character? Were you nice or crappy to Jason? And like there's been occasions, but like there's one issue where like he's like living in like some Luther condo or something, Tim Drake, and like Jason comes in and it's like he's the only Bat family member who will talk to Jason or something. And like, there's something about it. And I'm like, okay, I like you. And in the most recent, in Night Terrors Robin, it's very much a connecting moment between Tim and Jason. And yeah, like, so in the previous scene, he does mention like having come back from the dead. He's like, I give you grace for that, basically. And in the new one, it's very much in the same vein. And it's like, they connect. It's solid. It's a solid connection. And Tim Drake. So like, I guess there's been points that I haven't quite read where like Jason tried to like kill Tim a couple of times and like Tim really hated Jason. And like now they've gotten to a point where like Tim is a very solid ally to Jason. And they make it very clear in Night Terrors, which just came out.
Okay, so that's a current story?
Yeah, that's a current story. That was just a couple of months ago or like last month. The last one came out, something like that. So very, very recent. So right now, I like him until they decide that he hates Jason again.
Well, that's the nature of comic books. Is the next writer comes along. I always say it's like a Lego sculpture. I put down a red Lego, then you take over the series. You put a blue Lego, and then the next person puts a yellow Lego. But we got to look at that sculpture as a whole, even though it's made up of different pieces.
Mostly, I liked him, but like right now, I very much liked him. Things will change. It's really like, I hate to say it, but like the way I treat DC is like, who is nice to Jason? And I want those. And like, so I'm a big Roy Harper fan. I like Starfire. I like Bizarro and Artemis from that Red Hood.
It's funny, Roy Harper, to me, I always thought he would be like a perfect fit to be best friends with Jason Todd. They have the same extreme, like, first off, they're violent, they're troubled,
you read the Red Hood and the Outlaws?
Oh
One where
no,
he teams up with Roy Harper and Starfire.
that was the new 52, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
And like
that was my jumping off point for DC.
I read that just for Jason, and like it's not as good as the next series, but like it's okay. And I mostly like the Roy Jason like interaction there.
That's smart. They're like a perfect fit, for a buddy cop movie.
I thought they worked well together.
Yeah, they're kind of the same character. You know, I'm trying to think if there's anybody in Marvel that has that like disturbed past.
And in the Wayne Family Adventures, I believe they actually like Damien's trying to make a friend, and he's like, "How do you make a friend?" And like Jason references Roy, and he's like, "I broke my best friend out of jail," and like, so I think that they are best friends.
Okay.
Like they that's not canon, but like I think a lot of people do treat them kind of like as best friends from that.
Oh, I asked you before, and we kind of got distracted. Did you read the Batgirl with Cassandra Cain? You know, the Asian girl who didn't speak, and then she became Batgirl, and then they kind
I
of forgot
kind of
about it.
I know Cassandra Cain, but I'm probably not reading the storyline that you're talking about. I read some of like Batman and Robin Eternal, which has her in it, but I
Yeah,
read that for
she had a
Jason.
solo series. I'm trying to think. Maybe it was like around 2005 or something like that.
No.
And in the solo series, Bruce basically gave her an allowance, so she had her own money, and she got like her own lair.
Oh
And,
my God, he needs to stop
yeah,
adopting kids that he's gonna get killed.
and she goes to like some really bad part of town, and she like buys this like small building and makes it her headquarters. She makes like a bat computer and everything, and
Mhm.
and Alfred would show up once a week just to check up on her, and it was really funny. Like it was funny, but at the same time it was creepy. One of the neighbors, she like becomes friends with like a prostitute, and she's like, yeah, your John shows up once a week, and Cassandra's having difficulty explaining herself, but the neighbors all think that Alfred is showing up once a week for a booty call, and like that's her what's the word, her sugar daddy. Yeah, that's the word, sugar daddy. And at that point, I got like a really sick stomach feeling in my stomach, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this series because I'm insane and I'm a completionist. But I was just like, it, if it looks improper, the look of improperness is also improperness. Like this is Batman. Batman's associates shouldn't be mistaken as sugar daddies for young little Asian girls who, I don't know. I just thought it was ugly, and then they kind of sweep her under the rug. Does she still exist? Is she still around? Did she
Oh
die?
no, she's still around. She's I think she's in Batgirls now.
Is she still called Batgirl? Like, because Barbara Gordon is never Oracle in this new continuity. So what's
I
going
think she
on?
might be Orphan again.
Oh, that's her name,
Wasn't
Orphan.
she Orphan a while? I think she was Orphan in Batman and Robin
And I
Eternal.
stopped. 2015. It was a hard break with DC for me. So I don't know.
But that was like sort of her first appearance. So that must have been before.
Oh yeah, that's right. She was Orphan originally, and then she became Batgirl. Yes, I forgot
So
about
I
that.
think she's Orphan now, but like there's a series called Batgirls where I think it was like her and Spoiler and Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. But like, this is going to sound terrible. It kind of makes sense because my system is mostly men, but like, I'm a super misogynistic comic book reader in a way. Like if there were like it was just a team of girls in the Bat family, and I was like, I'd be so much more interested if they were men. Like I'm drawn to the men in comic books, and I like now that I figured it out, I'm like, maybe it will change. And I'm like, not like literally someone was talking to me about Captain Marvel in the new movies. And I was like, I'd be so much interested if it was the original. And he was just like gaping at me and he's like, that was a dude. And I was like, that's what I'm saying. But like all the women comic book readers, like it's expected. We're supposed to get super excited about the women. And I just
Well, I find that to be silly too. Like, oh, this hero is for women because he's a woman. Like, I don't know. there's girl superheroes that I just like because they're cool. They got cool powers. You know, they got cool like
Some of them
like Wonder Woman. I like not because she's a woman, but because the association with mythology. You know,
some of them I do like, even though they're women, but like even though I do like some women comic book characters, but like if I had to list my top 10 favorites, like a woman wouldn't even be on there. Like all of my favorites, my hardcore favorites are men. And that's
well,
one of the reasons I know what I like. And like that's one of the reasons when I look for like new characters, new series, if it's heavily women, if it's like an all women thing, I'm probably not gonna like it.
well, you know, when they do it like this is for women. It's they kind of make it goofy. You know,
I don't like it. Just write a good storyline.
right,
And
right. A
like,
good
if
story,
you
and the
do
rest
it
will
with
follow.
women, some people
Build
are
it,
gonna like
and they
it.
will come.
Right. And you know what? If you write a good storyline and it's all women, I'll probably like it. Like, I think part
Right.
of it is like, I feel like it's pandering now, but like part of it, like, I might read it if I read enough good things about it. But like, honestly, like,
Yes, you
yeah,
use the correct pandering. If I'm supposed to like I'm Italian. My you know my grandfather came from Italy, so I'm supposed to like the Huntress because she's Italian. I don't care. I like the Huntress because I did like the fact that they used this mafia and made her like personal vendetta against the mafia, and the fact that she was Italian is integral to her character because yeah, she was born into this mafia family, and that's an Italian thing. But I don't like her because she's Italian. It's a coincidence that I like her because she's Italian. I like her because I like that whole story of she was born into a crime family, and then the crime family turned on her, and you know she's like in revenge.
it kind of bothers me. Like, I wish I could like women comic book characters a little bit more, but like, someone pointed out when I started reading comics, it was in general like
Yeah,
men
Marcus says I'm
characters were, like,
supposed to like The Sopranos. I've never seen an episode of The Sopranos. I don't know. After Goodfellas and Casino, I feel like there's no need for further exploration of the mafia in movies. But I don't know. Everybody tells me I should like The Sopranos. And
someone,
I'm that contrarian. If you tell me I'm supposed to like something, I won't like it.
yeah, like everyone told me I needed to read The Help, and I already didn't want to read it, and I was like, I definitely don't want to read it now. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like,
if you want me to tell me, oh, everybody loves this, that just means okay.
but like,
I don't. Oh,
I
Mark, I
wish,
missed this comment. That's how they write Wonder Woman. Yeah, they write Wonder Woman. Oh, she's for you. She's your hero. She's, you know, just make a good story because if it's driven by agenda, and I feel that this comic was driven by agenda, it if it's honestly a good story, like a writer, oh, I got this good idea for a story, you know, as long as it doesn't break the character, as long as it doesn't ruin the character, and it's like an honest story, yeah, I'll read your stuff. But if you're like, we're gonna make, no, now I'm gonna talk crazy, but we're gonna make this character for you. He's Irish. His mother's Irish. His father's Italian, and blah
no,
blah
but
blah blah.
that's what some people do. It's like with
Right.
some of
That's
the
what I said
diversity
before. I
is just
don't like identity
pandering.
politics in my comic books. I don't want like hell, I can't even think of I can't even pronounce Huntress's last name, but the fact that she's Italian doesn't make me like her.
I will
You know,
take a well-written Christian character over a poorly written Jewish character every
right,
day.
right,
Like,
right,
but of course I want well-written Jewish characters. But I
right.
wish
I
I
want
liked
well-written
women.
characters. You know,
I
make like Kamala Khan to me is a pandering character. Like, what's her great story? What are her motivations? You know, what drives her? Why is she a superhero?
She
You,
loves superheroes. But I wish I liked women characters more, but like someone pointed out when I started reading comics that men tended to be more well-rounded and more well-written, and
oh,
a
the
lot of
characters
the women,
themselves.
yeah, like
Okay.
they had more character development, they had better storylines, they had better backgrounds, like whatever, like, and a lot of women were pandering. So when I was 16, my boyfriend was like, let's go into a comic book store. And I was like, comic books. And he handed me a She-Hulk, which was sort of like not as well written as it was later on. And like, I was just like, okay. So like I bought this She-Hulk comic and I took it home and I was like, I kind of like it. But and like a month later, I'm knee deep in X-Men and I broke up with him. And he was like, wait, what? You're the perfect girlfriend now. You read comics. And I was like, yeah, but you didn't trust me with the good stuff, and I can't forgive that. I was like, he handed me a woman, and I clearly wanted like something better written, and a lot of the ones that were better written had at least, like teams with men on them. It wasn't like a woman solo at the time. I'm not saying that's still true, but I think I still have like that leaning, partly from that and partly because I was really drawn to the men because I didn't realize I had DID. But anyway.
Well, I think that's like when we're gonna make this new hot black character, and then it's like, oh, this character is created to be a representation of people, of the fans, and then he's not treated as a character. He's treated as a token, as a whatever, be it Jewish, be it Italian, what. I mean, I never liked Miles Morales until Into the Spider-Verse. He became an actual character in that movie. Before that, he was always, what was his defining moments? His defining moments were always echoes or reflections of Peter Parker.
I see so many criticisms like that. I don't mind Miles Morales because I started from the original universe, like the Ultimate Universe, which is where he originally came in, and like he actually made sense there.
Yeah, he was Spider-Man. There was no Peter Parker, or Peter Parker was
Peter Parker died. Peter
Yeah.
Parker died, and then he took over, and like that very much made sense. But like, you really have to differentiate him more, I think, now that he's living in a world with like both Spider-Gwen and Spider-Man.
That bothers me. This is a whole other topic, but I don't like it when there's infinite variations of like, if there's Flash and then there's a girl Flash, I'll buy that. There's a male and a female. Once you get past that, to me, it dilutes the character. I don't
like 20 different versions of Flash.
Right. I don't want Spider. Okay, the Spider-Man, and I'll accept Spider-Woman, but Spider-Gwen, Spider-Punk, all it does is take away the uniqueness of Spider-Man, and I become less interested. I don't want Wolverine girl. I don't want Kid Wolverine, and I don't want, Blue Wolverine, and I just find that to be
okay, but I do want Kid Omega.
Well, Kid Omega is his own thing. There's no Omega.
Okay, I was making a joke because I do love Kid Omega enough that I knit one of his sweaters because I saw it in the comic and I wanted it. So like a month or two later, I knit that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go upstairs for breakfast now. My wife is. I was joking that beans on toast is disgusting, so she said she was gonna make me beans on toast today to prove me wrong. So
okay, well, have fun. I hope it's not too disgusting for you.
I'm sorry.
Have fun. I hope it's not too disgusting for you.
She made a good point. She goes, you've had beans on a hot dog on a bun and you liked it. And I was like, okay, so we're going to go upstairs. Thank you for coming today. This is a lot of fun. I want to do more of this, have people on and talk about a particular comic. I enjoy this. So anybody who watches this now, anybody who in the future, email me at johnslongbox@yahoo.com and tell me what you'd like to talk about. And, we'll keep it as family friendly as possible, and I enjoy this. Thank you, Viv. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, Viv made a PowerPoint and did a lot of homework and did research, and I unfortunately couldn't get it to work.
It just turned into deranged ranting about how Batman was a bad father, so it's probably for the best.
And he deserved it. He did this. It took me years to get over the bad taste in my mouth over Batman from this particular story. Everything about the story stunk.
If anyone is interested in seeing the PowerPoint, DM me on Twitter. I can also expand that because I've got a couple more points I want to make. So if anyone's interested in
I'll put your Twitter handle in the description. Is that okay?
It's coaxial creature.
Okay. I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, you can put it as a description.
Because I haven't even watched it yet. I couldn't. My friend came over Friday to fix my computer, and we both just put our hands up in disgust and walked away. At least you got my printer to work, so there's that. So I didn't watch it yet. So
I can screen cap everything that I wrote and like send it to you and show you how like much I foam at the mouth about Batman being a bad dad.
And you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're probably harsher than me, but you're not wrong. Batman did not come out good in the story. Jim Starlin didn't come out good in the story. Jim Aparo could do no wrongs. He was just the art robot, so I can't blame him. But it's not Denny O'Neil did not come out good. I don't know. I think DC Comics did not come out good. It's a bad story. I they could have killed off if they wanted to kill off Jason Todd to show the stakes of comic books and teen sidekicks. That's a story I could get behind, but they did it in such a bizarre, ugly, and awkwardly done. And it made Superman look bad. It made Batman look bad.
I would have less problems if, like, 40 years on, they didn't all still blame Jason for his own death. I'm not gonna lie. That's the thing that gets me the most.
Yeah, it's a bad story. I to the point, like, in a magic universe where all of a sudden I'm writing Batman, I don't even think I'd have referenced the story again. It's better left forgotten and memory hold. It's just poor.
Okay, well, go have breakfast.
Thank you
It
for
was
coming. I
fun.
enjoyed this.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime you come back.
I will come back. You should tell me something you want to talk about, and if it's a story
Yeah,
I haven't read, I'll read it.
If you have anything that you want to talk about, message me. If I have something I think I don't know, maybe you could talk about Red Hood with me, because that's something I don't really know too much about, the further adventures of Jason Todd.
I could.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you for spending an hour and a half with us on a Sunday morning. I hope the weather's nice by you. I got a lot of stuff I got to do today, but thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.